welcome back to my channel. Today we are making this toiletry bag. I suppose it doesn't have to be toiletry. It's called the Modak by Tryxus Designs. It's got this really cute pocket on the back that's got a hidden zipper. And then on the front I have done a funky embroidery design. This one is from Urban Threads. I will put a link for that in the description box as well. So if you'd like to see how I make this, stay tuned. Alrighty, so off we go. So the first thing I want to start with are the zipper tabs, because, I don't know, I like to start with the small pieces first, I guess. Now you could iron them because they are fabric, or these ones are fabric, but upholstery fabric does not love to be ironed. So that's just a word of advice for you. This is, I believe it's called Texas, I think. Texas or something from Spotlight. When you iron it, it shrinks and goes all warped. So my suggestion is you can still use it, but I would wash it and iron it and shrink it, basically, before I start cutting things out. Otherwise, this panel will end up like wonky and way smaller. I did that the first time I ever used this stuff. I cut out all my pieces, ironed the interfacing on, and it all went horribly wrong. So, just a word of advice there. So I'm just going to fold both sides roughly into the center. Now, if you're new to bag making, feel free to mark the center. On this, you could just use a normal pen. I have got to the point, I've done this so often, I can now eyeball approximately the center. So I don't need to do that anymore. And we're also going to do the strap handle thing as well. I did try and iron this, but as you can see, that has been pressed for a very long time. I got the creases, but it does not hold its shape, which is unfortunate, but anyway. So I'm going to put my stitch length on 3 3/4, and then I'm just going to stitch down the edge of both sides. Probably don't need to back stitch because I am putting all of these into the seams, but I am going to chain stitch so I've got less tails everywhere. So I just add one in. I don't know why I'm doing that. I don't really need to back stitch on this. It's just a habit that I have because I like to back stitch everything. So then I'm going to take this. Now again, fold both sides into the center, but then we're going to fold it over so that there's no raw edges. And then I always stitch the open side first because you can always even up the other side if it doesn't work out the way you want. And out of habit I'm back stitching, but again you don't need to back stitch necessarily here because it's just holding a strap and that will all be in the seam allowance. It's just my habit that I have. It's a good habit to have, really. Now you will find that this may want to twist a little bit because again the upholstery, I just twist it in the opposite direction. It tends to straighten it out pretty well. So now I'm going to undo all of these. Oh, I've also made my tabs 1 inch wide. I'm pretty sure the pattern has them smaller, but I just wanted big chunky ones. After all, this is a man's bag, hence the design. Alrighty, so now I can pop them to the one side. Just, they're done, they're out of the way. And same with the handle, over to one side. So now I want to do the top section because that's got the most pieces going on, and we all know that I like to get rid of my pieces. So you should have 3 top bits and then 2 skinny bottoms, 2 skinny tops and 2 thick tops. So you should have 4 lining pieces, 3 exterior pieces. And that may seem weird, but just go with it. So I'm going to grab some zipper tape. Now I've just got my continuous chunk of it going on over here. That's okay. So I'm going to grab one of my chunkies stick my zip. So I've got the fabric right side up, the zip right side up, and then I'm going to grab one of these bad boys and put this one right side down. Now, you should probably pin this if you're new, so you can clip with Wonder Clips down the side. Or if you're more advanced, you can just pop it in like this. I will do my next one clip just to show you. And then I'm just running my foot along the edge of the zipper tape. Back stitching, needle down. Actually, chop off the zipper tape might be a better idea. So these are my zipper scissors. For anybody that's never watched a video, I have a whole bunch of different scissors. These ones are just for cutting zips and plastic and like opening stuff and mail. They're like the kitchen scissors. They're not overly sharp, but they get the job done. All right, so now I'm going to finger press this open. And I'm going to top stitch both of the pieces. So I want to have a 3 3/4 stitch length for this. And I'm using a 1/8 of an inch seam allowance from the zipper. So I'm just pulling on this to make sure that it's nice and creased and then finger creasing it. You can also iron it if you haven't used the vinyl fabric. If you've used the vinyl, you'll have to finger crease it, but it'll also work better. So there you go. All right, so now I've top stitched that one. I'm going to do the same to the other big piece. So I'm going to grab another one and do the same thing again. So, for those that pre-cut their zips, you cut it first, like so. And then I get my skull ball. So we have the lining right side up and the zipper right side up. Now, because I haven't put my zipper pulls on yet, there is no right and wrong way for this. If you've bought pre-done zips, you'll need to make sure that when you line it all up, they're all going to go the same right way. So then we just, I always clip it 2, and then I'll take the third piece and make a sandwich, put it right sides down. So if you pretend the right side is butter, right, you put your butter inside the sandwich. Unless you're using a sandwich press and you want the outside browned. But that's a problem for another day. That analogy doesn't work. Alright, so I'm going to go back to a joining length, which for me is 2.5. I'm going to back stitch at the start, because we always back stitch. And then back stitch. And then because I've already cut my zip, I can just bring this around and then fold out both the sides. I'm going to back stitch because, again, I like to lock everything in. And then I'm just going to finger press and stitch. And I always stop with the needle down so that my tugging won't make the stitches wonky. So if I lift that up, I'll have like a dodgy stitch while I'm doing all of this maneuvering. Okay. So now we need to do our middle bit. So grab one of your small pieces. Put that one aside. Grab one of your small pieces, and again, you can wonder clip it. You don't want to be putting pins through your waterproof canvas because you're literally just punching extra holes through it. And the idea is that it's waterproof. It obviously won't be 100% waterproof because we're stitching it, but you can add a glue if you actually need it waterproof. But anyway, so got that one up, like so. And then we're going to take our other piece and put that right sides down. Now again, if your fabric's directional, you really need to think about how you're putting these on. Obviously mine is not. like changing your stitch length all the time is do all of the joining sewing and then come back and do all of the top stitching. That's obviously not what I'm going to do, but you can do it that way because I do switch back and forth a lot between 2.5, 3 3/4, 2.5, 3 3/4. You don't have to do it this way, guys. I just like doing it this way because it's easy to get to seams. You also probably don't have to top stitch if you don't want to. If you're new and you're terrified of top stitching, you can skip it. Just make sure you give it a really good iron, would be my life suggestion to you. All right, so we're gonna take our other piece and clip our lining on. And again, if this was a speed sewing video, I probably wouldn't clip half as much as I am. The beauty of waterproof canvas is it does not at all stretch, so you can't accidentally pull it out of shape. It is what it is. All right, so then we're going to take this, I'm going to fold that out of the way, and we're going to stick that right sides down. So you've got your short side here, and then we're going to add another short side. And what this does is we'll then create 2 separate chambers, because I'll have 2 bits to join 2 walls to, if that makes sense. I think it makes sense. All right, so under we go, back to a joining stitch of, for me, is 2.5. Now different machines, you'll want different stitches. My mate's got a domestic machine and she puts hers on 3 and it comes out smaller than mine. So I just tell you what I'm doing so that you know. But this is a joining stitch. Joining stitches are shorter, so that they're more joining and less decorative. The longer your stitch, the less hold it kind of has. Unless you're on an industrial leather, crazy thick stuff. But that's like the exception to the rule. Alright, so now we still need to come and top stitch this one, because otherwise we'll have an odd amount, and I don't like that. So you just want to make sure that this is folded over. So again, you can come and finger press it. If you're using cotton fabrics, you could definitely go and iron it. But you just want to make sure that everything is out of the way as you're doing it. And then the back looks like this. So these middle bits will technically overlap, but that's now given us 2 chambers to stitch stuff to. All right. Now we want some zipper pulls. So I'm going to go with gunmetal grey. Now the pattern has 2 zipper pulls. I'm just going to do 1 on each because that's what I want. But you can definitely just put 2 zipper pulls. You just put 1 on each end. And again, because my fabric's not directional, I don't need to think about which end I want that to be. So I'm going to split the zip a little bit and then just feed it on with my zipper jig. I can even turn the camera so you can watch that. So this is my zipper jig. It is a fork attached to a clamp that I can move around, and it doubles as my double-sided tape holder, because I like things to be multifunctional where possible. So I'm just going to feed both sides in evenly, theoretically anyway. I actually didn't do that evenly. So you see how there's like a step? See how it goes down? That means that it won't zip up evenly. So you just take it off and do it again. And sometimes it goes first time, and sometimes it likes to fight me. But that one was fine. So now I'm going to put the zips roughly in the middle so that they're out of the way of everything. Move on to the next bit. So I'm going to twist your back. There we go. So what we might do is we might just keep building this piece since we're up to it. So we're going to take our tabs, and the side that's got the gap, we're going to put that together. So we're putting wrong sides together, and I'm just going to clip that with 2 clips, not just one. One can swivel too much. So 2 clips on the end like so. 1 and 2, and then the other end. And then again, so I'm always putting the wrong sides together so that we see the nice outside and just pinning it over the top of the zip. And the reason, if I only put 1 clip, that's got too much movement in it, which means when you're sewing it, it could shift out of place. But 2 clips gives it an extra security. See, like so. All right, let's move on to our back pocket. There are my insidey bits. They're my bottom pieces. So that's all the gusset stuff. And then these are my outsidey bits. All right, so we're going to take our bottom lining and some zipper tape, or if I can find the end. There it is. All right, and so then you can just measure along there and chop again with the zipper scissors. So line that up, right sides together. Back stitch to lock it in. And then I'm just going to line up all 3 pieces and stitch. I'm going to crank it back up to 3 3/4. And then fold both of those down and top stitch. Like so. Then I'm going to grab my top piece, grab my lining, actually, clip that. The reason I'm going to clip it this time because it's always easy to do the first bit, but the second bit is much easier if you clip it. That was probably an overkill of clips, but that's okay. And then you grab one of these. We want to make sure that it's going to be the right size. So we want to bend over. So you want to line that up along there, like so, and then bend this over so it's just overlapping the zip. So we want to have this excess folded like so, and the idea is that this piece and that piece are the same size. Like that. Actually, I'm going to iron that. Alright, change my mind on what I'm going to do. I know you can't tell, but it's been a while. So I'm going to stitch down the lining piece here so that my clips are out of the way. Like that. And then open that out. Like so. Get rid of my tails. And then I just want to line up this bottom panel. And these being my zipper scissors are probably not going to do that terribly well. So I'm just going to trim off the excess here, like so. And then I want to line this up like this, because this is how big the back needs to be. And then I can just tuck this part under. Probably even clip the side so it doesn't move. So that's how big the end result needs to be. So then what you can do is you can just tuck this bit under like that until it sits where you want it to. So I want it to just cover the zip like that. And then now I can top stitch along the zipper and the top stitch. So I might put my top stitch up to 3 3/4. And I'm just running my zipper, my foot along the edge of my zipper, sorry. Look, now you've got like a hidden zipper section. So I need another zip, a zipper pull. So I'm going to put that in my zipper jig, which, oh, you can just see it on the screen. That's good. And I want to go from this end to that end. Like so. I don't want to push it all the way to the edge because that would be silly. And then chop off the tails. Always chop off your tails. I'm going to tack down the 2 side bits. So it's going to enclose the zip so the zipper pull can't come off. And it's also going to help that sit down a lot nicer. So that's just within the seam allowance. And then this pocket just folds down on top. And then you can actually tack the whole thing. So then this is just one piece. And then chop off the excess. So I'm doing it, I'm stitching within the seam allowance so that you won't see this. This is just a tacking, joining-y stitch. Like so. And then that is now a single solid piece. And then just chop off your excess. Those scissors cut that quite well. I'm quite impressed. Right, so then I'm just going to put my zip back in the center because I don't want it to get in my way while I'm doing any other stitching. Because if you hit the zip with your needle or the zipper head, you're most likely going to snap it. Or worst case scenario is you actually stitch in between it and then you're going to have to unpick it all anyway. So that is now that piece done. So we have our 2 outsides. Now we're just up to all the gusset joining parts. So I'm going to take my main piece and I'm going to take my gusset inside pieces and I'm just going to stitch them up to but not over the zipper. So I do this in a lot of my bags. We're just going to have to do it twice though because there's twice as many pieces. So I'm going to line this up so that if you've done it all correctly, it lines up lovely. So I'm just going to stitch with a 2.5 stitch seam allowance, oh not seam allowance, stitch length. I can't talk today, sorry guys. And then trim off my tails. Always trim your tails as you go. And then we're going to do the other side. So I know it's not a very big bit, it's like 1 inch, but it's still worth doing, I promise. And I always like to sew from out to in because I can find I can get closer to the zip without stitching over it. We don't need to stitch over it yet, I promise we're going to do that later. In fact, if you're struggling, you can just take these bits off. If the zipper pulls in your way, just take it off and put it aside. It's not a big deal. promise nobody's judging you. In fact, you could probably get closer if you take it off. Let's see, shall we? Oh, I can! See? Alright, so I can get closer to the zip if I take the pulls off. So we might just take them off. I know it's counterintuitive because I put them on, but whatever. Alright. And so then we pull this taut so it lines up. Now, if you're using a number 5 zip, this actually should all line up really, really well because she writes the patterns in accordance with number 5 zip. You can use a different size. It just means you might need to adjust these a little bit. So now we've got a loop. We need to do our other loop. I'm going to do all the loops at the same time, and then we'll add in our walls. So the reason we do the linings first is because they are more movable, malleable, pliable, I don't know, pick a word. But basically, they're not as stiff as the outside, which means I can get around them a lot better and easier. So again, we pull tight, make sure everything's lined up, stitch the end. You want to stitch up to, but not over the zip. We will close that gap when we stick our outside on, but we're not worrying about that bit yet. All right, let's take this off because it definitely is easier without them. Just don't forget to put them back on later. That would suck a little bit, and you'll have to unpull stuff. All right, so again, line it up, stitch it down. Making sure we back stitch at both ends because we don't want this to come undone. Chop off our tails. I know we've got a lot of tails. This is why I like to save thread with chain stitching where I can. These cannot be chain stitched. And if they can, I have not mastered it or thought of it. So, chop the tails off. Alright, so now we've got 2 awesome loops. So what you want to do is you want to fold the seams together to find the center. And then I'm going to use my $4 Bunnings scissors because I cut myself every time I do it with those. I have officially learnt my lesson. So I'm just chopping off like a really small little section to create a marked triangle, I guess. And then I'm going to do the same to the top as well. So you can actually clip the outside and the inside because you're going to need to know that for both. But I don't like to do it until we've joined it because if you do the wrong seam allowance at one end, it's going to be wonky. And you don't want wonky, I promise. Alright, so I can see that that is there. And so there. And then we're going to fold this over and do it to the other side. You don't have to clip it. You can mark it with a pen, chalk, texture, whatever makes you happy. But this is easy to see in the long run. And then we're going to do the top. So I'm going to do the top inside and outside. Alright. Look at that. Love it. Okay, so now I'm going to do the same to all of these. Fold it in half. And then clip the centers. So I'm going to do this to all of them. You don't want to do on multiple layers at a time because if they slip, you'll be off center. Then your bag will be skew-with. You don't want that. So you don't have to chop off a big triangle because you've got to remember it's twice as large as the tiny bit you're taking off because it's folded in half. Alright, so that's all of those done. Love it, love it, love it. So now you can just pick one. Now again, if you're using directional fabric, think about where you're going to put your top versus bottom. So then I'm going to line up my clips. Not my clip. No, my clipped. My clipped triangles. The word clipped I use way too often for everything. Anyway. So I'm going to go 3, and then I'm going to do 2 the other side. Just along the straight bit. We're going to deal with the bendy bits in a minute. And then I'm going to come to the opposite side and do the same thing. And I'm always making sure my clips are facing the gusset because they're easy to pull off, and you always sew with the gusset up. So then we're going to take, if you want to, you can find the center of the side. I can eyeball that because it's only a very short bit. And then we're going to attach it to the seam part of the other side. Or you can clip it. I probably should have clipped it. For the beginners in the group, you can still do it now. You just fold it in half like this. And if you're going to use these, keep your hands well and truly away. And then add a clip. And so now we're going to push our thumbs in and create this as a 3D shape. So what I do is I put my thumbs together and then kind of push to create that curve. See how I've got a curve? So I do that to the fabric. And that every time it works. And then you just add some clips on it. Now you will find that these pieces will ripple a little bit in the corner, but that doesn't matter so long as the ripple is outside of where the stitch will be. So it's meant to do that, so please don't freak out that it has done it. Totally normal. Right, so you put your thumbs there, and I just kind of do this motion to push them together. And see, I don't know if you can see that, but it's actually quite rippled, but on the outside of my thumbs. And then we're going to do the same to the other end. You also want to make sure that your seam allowance here points towards the bottom of your bag. I always clip it down. I don't know why, but it helps the bag sit nicer. It's just a thing. And clips facing outwards makes life much, much easier. So again, thumbs, squish it down so that things line up, and then clip it in place. Alright, gusset side up. Stitch length on 2.5, and off we go. Clean up your clips as you go. It will make life much, much easier for you. I'm going to bend all of this out of the way. So I'm just going slowly around the curves, like so. Voila. Then you can grab some scissors and just cut off that excess around the curves so that it's going to sit nicer. Otherwise you're going to get this kind of ruffly effect, which we don't want. So I just chop off the excess. On all the sides, all the corners, bends, not really corners, I guess. pop that in the bin. So now we are on to the next side of this. Now I'm going to leave my last one open. I want to do it on an outside, not an inside, so it's easier to get to. And I might actually fold these in half this way and clip the sides as well. It's ultimately quicker. So another way you can do it is if you're doing it for the first time, you can fold it like this, and then you can clip 2 at once. You just want to make sure that your clips aren't too deep. You want them to be within your seam allowance. That is very important. You can always clip a second time, so do smaller first and then larger. Okie dokie. So the next one, we're going to do the same thing again. So clip, clip, clip. I can hear a delivery truck. I'm going to hit pause. Sorry, guys. Alright, that was my missing piece of vinyl. Huzzah! So I'm going to start on the bottom. I've clipped it off camera because you can watch me do the next 2. Alright, so I'm just going to push it down, stitch around. I'll put all my clips away as I go and just push all of this out of the way. Now this one's going to feel a lot tighter than the outside one, and that's because it is. That's not impossible to do, so don't give up. And stitch around. So this is a very small, because this is the inside piece, this is actually not a very wide piece of fabric. So slow and steady will win the race on this one. Don't try and hurry. And you'll probably want to use more clips on this one than the outside ones. Okay. Trim off your tails, which I'm sure you're all sick of me saying. So now technically we have one whole section. You can unzip it. Don't go all the way, so we haven't sealed the thing. But you now have a whole section going on here. I know it looks a little bit crumply, but I've just got to trim off this bit. Quite excited for this, actually. I do have plans for this bag. I'm going to sell this bag with a 3D printed beard comb when my printer's back up and running. I think it would be awesome. It can be like the same colour as and be all matchy. Alright. Trimmed all the corners there. Gotta cut my last tail. So, before we do the next one, you want to make sure that your zip is a little bit open because this is how we're going to turn the bag through this second lot. I mean, you can do it through the first one if you want to. It doesn't really matter. You just need to make sure you're going to leave a gap. So we're going to leave it on the last piece that we do so that it's on the outside and easier to get to. So first things first, I'm going to do the other inside tight one. So there's not, as you can see, there's not a lot of fabric. So it is quite tight to do this one. And again, this is why we're doing the lining first. Because if you tried to do this and you'd already touched the outside, I promise it would be hell. It would not be fun. I would give up and probably either throw it in the bin or rip off all the sides. It could go either way, depending on my mood and how much energy drink I've had, I guess. Alright. So I'm going to come line up at the bottom. Clip along. And then turn out the edge. I probably should mention this is not technically in the center, so you don't want to line that up with the center, but it is good to know and you can judge by the others. So when I found the center on this one, I can see it's approximately that far down, so I can do the same to all of them, and now I can actually just work my way through the curve. So all I do is I grab it and I pinch it a little bit and then clip it. That comes with practice, so don't probably rush off, but if you're an intermediate to advanced sewer, that is a good skill to learn. And because this bit's quite tight, because we've stitched everything and it's all very short and close, you're going to want to put more clips here than the other places. Then I'm going to come down. So I've just got this little bit here, and if I turn it like that, it all evens out. So then I just need to add a bunch more clips. Lots and lots of clips is pretty much the key, especially to this tight little section at the top here. And it's getting tighter because we're adding more and more fabric. Things don't want to maneuver as well. So we're going to do the other end. Start at the bottom. Clips towards the gusset. They're all facing the wrong way, but I'm going to leave it for now. Grab some more clips. Clip, and then up, and I just kind of do this with my fingers to line up the fabrics so that I can get around that curve. And then I want to pin that bit down, and again, this is going to be difficult here because it is a smaller, tighter piece of fabric than the other one we're going to do, which is also why we're going to leave the gap on the other one. There we go. Okay, gusset side up again. Move my scissors. Not far though, so I'm going to have to trim off the corners again in a minute. So I'm just starting on a flat spot. It doesn't really matter which flat spot. It's never easy to start on a curve. You either want to start just after or just before, not on a curve. It's a terrible idea. So again, this is very tight, so I'm going to go slower here. There's not a lot of wiggle room between my foot and the seam allowance at that little bit there. But again, not impossible to do. And again, I'm going to push this down and flat so it's out of my way so I can see what I'm stitching. This is one of those few times that I'm not going to tell you to hold it like a 3D object. Flat is fine. Ta-da! Alright, chop your tails. Where's the other one? Grab your scissors. Trim down your seams. This would be actually a really good time to be using my zigzag scissors or pinking shears for those that don't call them zigzag scissors. Even though mine are relatively blunt, they cut the waterproof fabric really well. Oh, also, if you're watching this and you're new to me and my channel, my waterproof fabric arrived and I will be putting it up at 4 PM on Sunday to buy. Each time I progressively buy more, but I do usually sell out within 2 hours of everything. So some colours sell out in like 20 minutes. I am working on buying bigger and bigger quantities, but I am only one person with only so much money, so we just work up to bigger. Alright, so I'm starting at the bottom and I've put a clip in the middle and then I'm going to make these go flat out to the curve and then put another clip there and then take out the middle one. Because that's where my gap's going to be. This is where I'm going to turn the bag out. So I'm just going to put 2 clips here and here. That's going to give stability and then I'm going to switch out and go to the top. And And again, making sure my clips face the gusset piece. Not that I can go crazy fast with this bag. It is a little bit tricky if you're brand new to sewing bags, just in the fact that the fabric kind of wants to fight you a little bit. But the actual construction's pretty easy. I haven't read the instructions yet. I know I should, but I haven't. I did skim. I skimmed the instructions in case I missed something. Not gonna lie, I did skim, but I didn't sit down and read. That comes with practice, in the sense that you make enough bags, you tend to start noticing patterns in the way things happen. Some bags I still have to actually check the instructions, but most of the time I can work it out all by myself. Alright. So see how this bit's got a lot more maneuverage? It's probably only an extra, I don't know, half an inch, but it helps. I promise. Lots of clipping. I should get earpods or something to listen to music, except I'm very, very worried about doing that. I've seen a lot of people do it, but I think I'd start singing, like a lot, to any good song that I put on, which would be most of them. And I promise I don't want to subject you to that. Okay, so we have clipped everywhere but the flat bit along the bottom. You don't want to go and try and do the curves on the inside of the bag. It's way too difficult. Terrible idea. So now I'm going to flatten the bag and I'm going to start at the clip. So I'm going to start at the edge of the flat part. Put my tails down and behind so that they don't cause a fuss. Back stitch. Now with back stitching, again, if you're new, you only need like 2 or 3. They also call it lock stitch in different videos and in different countries. I call it back stitch, probably because you go backwards. That would make sense. But yeah, back stitch or lock stitch. Now again, I'm just going to fold all of the excess parts of the bag out of my way. You can always tell when I get to a straight bit because I go a bit faster. Partially because there's not as many clips, and also because there's just, you know, less to maneuver on a straight. Readjust the bag. Alright, and then back stitch when you get to your last clip. Wonder clip. Zigzag scissors or pinking shears. And then trim down all your corners. If you want to, you can trim down everywhere, but it's not necessary. Okay. I know it looks like a hot mess. Just bear with us. Alright. So my zip has opened at this end because of my maneuvering. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to zip the zip all the way off the end and then put it back on. That seals it all back up again, so everything's nice and even. It's not a huge deal. These things happen. You can also put zippers on without the zipper jig. So you just put in one side till it's exactly halfway. You can see where it's going to join. And then you can just kind of maneuver it back and forth and then push on the top of the zip. And voila! Okie dokie. This bad boy. So we need to go back and put our zipper pulls on. Tabs, pulls, whatever. And we're also going to pull up the gap in the lining. So the gap that we didn't sew, we want to add that into that clip so that everything's going to sit flush and it's going to close up that hole. So up and flat like that. Zipper tab facing in. I would recommend doing them in fabric if you're new to sewing. If you did these in vinyl, they might be a bit chunky. And depending on your machine may not like it. But that ultimately is entirely up to you. Like if you were doing a vinyl gusset piece and then fabric sides, I might, especially if I was doing it on a domestic machine, I might think about doing matching tab in the fabric that you chose for your mains. It'll give a nice, interesting pop of detail, and then make this flatter for you. All right, so because I've only got 2 zips, my zips end here. So I want my handle here so I can hold the handle like that. So we're going to take our handle and we're going to measure 1.5 inches down because I want it close to the edge without being crazy close. And then I'm going to clip it, and then we're going to baste it or tack it, whatever word you prefer to use. And yes, I usually say put 2 clips in, but I'm going to stitch it where it sits right now. So I'm just doing it within the seam allowance, and no, I'm not. There is no more bobbin left. That worked out perfectly because there's no gap. Oh, I like it. All right. So when I wind my bobbins, I'm gonna grab an easy one to do that's on camera. I also like to, on industrial machines, I have said this in one other video, but I should start saying it more often. And a machine servicing guy that I know taught me that every time you wind a bobbin, you should put a little bit of oil on your bobbin round. So I've just got like a little plunger thing, and I take a little bit of the oil that the machine sits in, and then I just put it onto the bobbin. So they've got a little piece of, I don't know, foam or fabric or spongy stuff in there that will hold it. So now when you listen to this, see how it's a lot more quieter? You may not be able to tell, but I can. And you also want to wind your bobbin on full speed, because what that does is that's pushing all the oil through your machine, keeping it nice and oiled. So if you're a slow sewer with bags, this is like the best thing you could ever do in life for your machine. All right. So I'm going to pop that in. And another thing, your tension, you should be able to hold the thread and your bobbin not fall on an industrial machine. So if you've just got one and you're new to it, that's what your tension should be. And then if you shake it, it should go, not do that, but it should fall just a little bit. I gotta go get that. Alrighty, I got it. So now that I've oiled my machine, I don't want the oil to get onto my project. So I just grab a little scrap and just run a small line. It doesn't have to be a long line. You can see very quickly that it picks up any oil. I actually don't have any, but you always just do it on a scrap so it's not getting on the project that you're working on. And now your machine should run like gold. So to baste these on, to ensure that they're not going to slip and move, I start in the center of the little strap part, and then I backstitch to the edge and then go forward. I don't know why it works, but it does. So it won't shift when you're trying to stitch it. If you start at the edge, you're kind of pushing it a little bit. So starting on it will stop the issue of slippage. Or at least theoretically it will. So there's my handle. Beautiful. Now, I'm going to stick this onto here. I'm going to clip both ends. I'm going to line it up in the center. And I can see that I have a very big gap. So I've actually got quite a large gap on each side, but I am just going to trim that down, so it's not a huge deal. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to put this wrong, like lining side up, just so that I can see what I'm stitching. And I'll start at the end. I'm going to back stitch, even though I'm going to cut that off, because it's a good habit to have. And then I'm going to stitch over them, and I'm going to back stitch, because those tabs will potentially take a lot of force. So I just want to ensure that they're nice and stuck, I guess. And then backwards again, and then forwards. Then run off the edge. Then I do the other end. Squish it all down nice and flat to get it into the machine. Chop off all your tails, which I know you were sick of me saying that, but I'm going to say it forever, so yay! Alright, and then I'm just going to chop off a sliver. Now I want to make sure I'm not going to cut the lining pieces, and you may also want to go and grab your heavier scissors for this. So I've just got a little bit of excess the way I've made it. It's no big deal. Just chop it down. Preferably with scissors that actually chop. That might help. But all my other scissors are over there. And I don't want to stop the video again. We've already stopped it several times because I lost the bobbin and got a delivery and, you know, life. So no. Right. Now they're even. So now we're going to do the same thing. So I've already found my top centers. I still need to find the bottom center. I'm going to fold it in half and get my little snippy scissors. Line up the seams and snip. So there's only 4 to find this time. Maybe I didn't do the top. I thought I did. Whatever. That's cool. I'm just folding it in half. Move all of the other part of the bag out of your way. Okie dokie. So then, it doesn't really matter which one's front and back unless, again, you've done directional fabric, which I have not, so we're fine. So I'm going to fold this in half. I'm going to find the top and the bottom center of this. Basically, you need the center of all your pieces ever. Which you could do at the start if you wanted to. Sometimes I remember to do that, and sometimes I don't, because I just want to get into the sewing. It's not a bad thing, it's just how it is. Chop. And chop. Okay, got all our centers. Grab a piece. Pick which way you want it to sit. I think I want it to sit down. So I'm going to make this my top and this my bottom in my design. You can actually have it either way. It's not necessarily an issue. Both ways look cute on this design. So pretty much everything I'm doing today is non-directional. I like it. Alright, so I'm just going to clip along the top. Now this is going to sit a lot firmer, so it's either going to be easier for you or more difficult, just depending on what you find easy and difficult. Dig in, grab a bunch of clips, just because I like to throw them on my bench is pretty much where I'm at there. Okay, so I've clipped the top and the bottom, then I'm just going to do the sides. So another trick that I'm going to do is I grab the main pocket with these two fingers like this, and then so grab the two ends and then pull it so that everything's taut and even, and then I can clip it down. I find that that is a very quick and easy way to do it. And then again, so I'm actually doing it again just in that small spot. So if I'm holding it this way, I can do it that way. The other option is I can do my thumb thing, where I grab the, pardon me, grab my fabric and push it into the corner. Alright, so then we're going to do the same to the other side. So I'm going to grab it with my scissor fingers, like that, and then pull everything so it's smooth and taut, and then clip down and around. So there we go. Lots and lots of clips. Now again, I'm going to put this gusset side up. I'm going to start on a straight bit. Oh, I've missed a corner. Alright, so push all the linings out of the way so that I can do this well. Back stitch, and then off we go. Now you could put piping on this. This would be a very cute bag with piping. In fact, this would have been a very cute bag if I had have used green piping the same color as the stitching on the design. That would have been adorable. Alright, make sure you clean up your clips as you go. It'll just make for a tidier workspace and make you feel better. Too much stuff in your way gets frustrating. Okie dokie. I chopped my tail at the same time then. Pop that in the bin, and then we're just going to do the other side. So if you want to check, you can actually look in there to make sure that all your corners are beautiful, which mine are, which is awesome. And you can also grab your zigzag pinking shears and just trim down the corners on this as well. You want them to sit nice, and this will help them to sit nicer. The bulk will make for like jagged corners, whereas if you chop it off, it's going to be like a smoother, nicer finish. You don't have to use zigzag scissors, you can just use normal scissors. Don't think because I own a million cool, funky, different things that you need them all. You can survive quite well without zigzag scissors. Just like you can survive quite well without those funky pliers I have. You could hammer things instead. I just like them. I like gadgets and things. That's just who I am. Not all of them, though. Weirdly enough. Alright, so I'm clipping along the bottom. Now, because this was all one piece, we're all good. Then I'm going to come back and do the top. We also, again, want to make sure that our zipper pocket where our panel... So we need to be able to basically put our hand through now. And check that now, because if you can't do it now, you won't be able to, well, you can, but it's going to take you a long time to open that zip from the wrong side. They're not designed to do it. They don't enjoy doing it. You can, but it's just more fiddly. Why be fiddly when you don't have to be? Alright, clipping along. And then we'll go to the other side. Right, then we're going to do a side again. So I'm going to scissor grab and then pull out, and it all just tucks in beautifully. And that will be to do with your seam allowances. So if you don't do the seam allowance that the pattern suggests, you may have a little bit of trouble. Seam allowances are there for a reason. The pattern designers have done all the math for you. That's why I don't design patterns. I'd hate to tell someone the wrong math. That's one side done, so we're going to do the same to the other. Grab scissors and then pull like so, and then clip. If you've got a different seam allowance to the pattern and you're finding things aren't quite fitting, feel free to just give a little bit in the corners. So if it doesn't line up perfectly, it's not the end of the world. Please don't scrap your project and throw it out. I just thought about this. I'm like, I should really mention it. If it doesn't fit, what you'll just do is, if this didn't fit, what you'd do is you'd pull this up and you'd have an excess like this in the corner. So your corner would be more rounded out, but the bag would still work because you could divide that problem into all your corners and then they'd all still be the same. They'd just be flatter. You'd flatten the curve. Yeah. All right. On, push all this down and out of the way. So I kind of push it on an angle so it's over there, not over here where I need it. Just slow and steady. I know you all think I'm a super fast sewer, but I'm not really. Alright, back stitch when you get back to the start. Chop off the tails. Sometimes I can do them all in one chop. And then again, chop off your excess around your bends. Oh, it's quite thick on this side. And that's because I'm cutting through the outside pocket pieces as well. So there's like an extra couple of layers of fabric and stuff there. So this is what your bag will now look like, and it doesn't look very flattering yet. So we're gonna open the hole, stick our hand into like a corner, and then I'm gonna push it so I can grab it like a puppet. And yes, when my child is home, the bag talks to him. I think it's cute. And then we just push the bag through the hole. And then I'm going to stick my hand back into the bag and just start pushing everywhere. I'm going to push all the corners out so it's going to sit really nicely. Now next time I make this bag, I reckon I would potentially put some fusible fleecy interfacing on the outsides. I think foam might be a little bit too thick. I don't know. It looks pretty good though. We've got nice edges. So with, this is just how it's sitting, right? And you can see that the edge here is not perfect, but it's sewn well. It's just, you need to kind of roll it, and then I do this backwards kind of motion to give it a nice crease, because the nice crease there will help it to sit flatter. See, that's already sitting flatter. So especially like, see here, how this is kind of bending in because of all the weight of all the fabric from the outside. So I'm just going to roll it right to the edge like this, and then kind of attack the bag a little bit. Now, if you can't do this to your bag, if you're worried your stitching's going to break, go and stitch another round. So even though I did one round, if you're worried about the strength of your bag, go like 1/8 of an inch back and stitch around a second time. It will give it like an added stability. Also, this bit here, because it's got the added extra everything, if you do have these awesome flat pliers, you can pinch it and help to crease it. So again, this is not a necessity, but see how that's flatter now? You probably can't necessarily notice, but I definitely can. So I'm going to do the same to the other side as well, because it's going to help it sit flatter. There is a lot of bulk right here. So I'm just going to squish it with 2 hands so it's less bulky. Look at that. It's no longer kind of sucking it in at the side. Super cool. All right. So now I'm going to pull out my lining. Now if you've got tags that you put in your bags, I've got these ribbon ones for now. I do plan on getting some woven ones, but it's a problem for another day. So I'm going to stick it in this seam. So it will be seen when people look in the bag, but it's not necessarily on the outside. I do find that people cut the tags off if you have them hanging out. And then they won't remember where they got it from. You want them to keep the tag. So if it's on the inside, they're more likely to just leave it there. So I'm just tucking the raw edges in, and then I'm going to also take that and just slip it between the 2 bits of fabric and stitch it closed. Now if you've done a different coloured lining fabric, you may want to change your thread colour. However, I don't have fluoro green, so I'm just going with this green. It's not really going to matter. Make sure you back stitch at the end. Trim off your tails, as always. And then you can just tuck that back into the bag. And voila! I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions, come join my Facebook group and feel free to ask them. Or if you make one for yourself, come and show me. See here? Needs more rolling. But yeah, until next time, guys.